Hey everybody, Ryan Newell here, and today in Motion I'm going to show you how to take a piece of text and place it on a piece of footage like this fence so that it looks like the text is actually a part of the fence. So the first thing is import this video layer, this source footage in your lesson folder, and once it's there, let's now create a piece of text. And I'm just going to put in Ryan Newell. And it might be kind of hard to see at first, but that's okay. Let's just go into our inspector and let's check out the size, and let's increase the size here to something like that. Now let's go to style and let's maybe change the face color to something darker like blue. I like blue. And then it's still kind of hard to read, so let's do an outline of, let's say, white, and maybe let's increase the width of that outline. Just make it so that it's really easy to see your text. Why don't we add a drop shadow just to make things interesting? Increase the distance here, and maybe also increase the opacity all the way up. There we go. I think our text is pretty easy to read now. Now the next thing I want to do is I actually want to change the anchor point on my text, and you'll see why in a bit, but I want the anchor point where I'm scaling things from, moving things from, to be right in the center, because right now if we go to our adjust anchor point tool, you'll see right now the anchor point is right here. So if I were to go in and start scaling, this piece of text, it would scale from there, and I don't want it to do that. I want it to scale from around the middle. So you'll see in a second why that's important, or at least why that makes things easier. So let's just move it right to the center here so that our anchor point is right in the center, and then when we scale and move it, it'll be moving from the center. Great, so that's about right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to move this back to my transform tool, and I'm going to place this. I'm going to go to my first frame here, and I'm going to place this somewhere about here because that's where I want to be on the fence. So let's place it right there. Now we're going to be using motion tracking, so let's go into library, into behaviors, motion tracking, and select match move. Now you can also, with this text highlighted, go down here into behaviors and then select motion tracking and match move if you want to do that as well. So I'll select that. And now we have match move applied to our text, and it's automatically selecting the layer below it. And if I go into inspector, go to behaviors, you can see right here it's automatically assigned the one below it. Now, you'll notice that where I'm placing this piece of text, if I just move for a second, if I were to motion track somewhere behind here, it might not be ideal. And in fact, right now, if I go and if we want to select the tracker, so let's just select the tracker here for match move, and here's our tracker. You'll notice if I say, well, I want to maybe, find a high contrast area. Oh, that looks like high contrast, right? So if I were to select that area right there, you'll see that now if I, go analyze, it's going to go along. And it might just start to have problems because you'll notice that the areas, there's the fence behind it, and there's like trees, and there's a lot of things going on that really kind of get in the way of this track. And in fact, we get a little X right here. If I just get rid of this, you'll see a little X right here. It's basically saying this is a hard thing to track. Choose a better area to track. And if we play this back, you'll see that the text is really kind of bouncing around. It's bouncing around. It's not ideal. And that is because, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in the foreground and the background here, and it's just not a very good place to track. Where is a better place to track is you'll notice up top here, there's not a lot of stuff in the background. There's just some clouds, but it's a lot more clean, whereas down here, there's all kinds of things going on with our tracker. So I'm just going to undo that track like this. And so now we should have no tracking. Okay, and I'm going to track somewhere up here. because it's a lot cleaner. So I'm going to track right there, or I could just go to my very first frame if I don't want to go forwards and backwards again, and I can just choose another one here. So let's choose this one right here, like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go Analyze, and you'll notice now the tracker is going to have a lot easier time of tracking this because there's no, like things in the background that are getting in the way, and it's just a lot better of a track. And you'll see when I play this in a second, it's a lot smoother. So we're just going to let this render, or analyze, excuse me. So that's an important thing to notice, is that when you are choosing your tracking areas, you really want to choose areas that are clean, that don't have a lot of things interfering with them, and so that really helps. Now, we are going to come up with another problem because of where we chose where to track, and we'll deal with that in a second. So now, if I play this, you'll see that while we have smooth motion, so the motion is quite smooth, it's a slow frame rate. The problem is that you'll notice here the fence is moving faster here than the text. And the reason for that is, up top here, you'll notice when things are farther away from the camera, so this area of the camera is further away than this area, when things are further away from the camera, they move more slowly. So like for instance, when you're in a car and you look out the window, the mountains or the hills in the background seem to move slowly, but the signs and the people on the road seem to move quickly, and that's called parallax. So what's happening here is that this tracker is tracking properly, but because this part of the fence is where we want to attach the text, because this area is closer to the camera, it's moving faster. And the way we fix that is to do this. We select our text, we go into Inspector, we go to Properties, and we actually move in Z-space. So Z-space is depth. So here's X space. You'll notice if I move this around, I'm going to be moving left and right. And if I move Y around, I'm going to be moving up and down. But Z space is depth, and even though this is a two-dimensional object, it's a 2D object, we can still technically move it in 3D space. So that's Z space. So watch what happens when I move this in Z space. It is going to get bigger. And the reason it's getting bigger is because it is getting closer to the camera, yes? So I'm going to give it a value of, let's say 600 or something like that. And we'll deal with, it getting bigger in a second because we don't want it too big. So I'm just going to change this to 600. And now you notice, okay, the text is really big. Well, the way we fix that is we just go to Scale here, and let's change this to maybe 60. And then let's move the position here and just get it positioned the way we want. So like there. And maybe something like this. And maybe I want to make it a little bit bigger again. So bring it back down. And you're going to have to play around with this. You're going to have to change the scale. You're going to have to change the Z space. The goal here, though, is that you want this Z number, the Z space, to be a number that allows so that this text moves along at the same speed as the fence. So let's just take a look right now and see what happens. So let's see how the R, there's this little piece of the fence right here that's just in front of the R. Let's see how the edge of this R and this little piece of fence, let's see how they interact with each other. Well, looks like it's still going a lot faster, yes? See how it's moving further and further away? So let's go and let's make that number even larger. Let's change this to something like 800. And then again, let's just move our text like this. Maybe I want to scale it down again to 60%. Okay, and then let's kind of give it the same area again so we can kind of really watch it. And let's keep checking to see. It's getting better, but it's still not quite fast enough. So maybe we need to go in and change this to, let's try 900. Okay, and then let's move this again, like this. And let's see if that is good. Okay, here we go. And it looks like it's just slightly drifting. See how at the beginning here, the space between the edge and this little part, and then when I go to the end here, it's a little bit further. So we just need to do it a bit more. So I'm just going to go one last time here. And again, this is going to take some playing around because everyone's different with your name and your size. Let's change this to 950. Let's see how that goes. Okay, and then let's just, once again, just move this slightly here. Okay, and let's see if this works. There you go. I would say that that is pretty good. It's drifting maybe a tiny bit, but again, this is just, you know, if we needed to really play with this, you know, I could just keep going in, but it looks like it is pretty close. So the next thing is, now that the distance here seems to be okay, there's still a problem with perspective, okay? The perspective isn't quite right because, you know, this text is straight on, but we're looking up at the fence, yeah? And so we want the text to have the same perspective as the fence. So the way I'm going to do that is a couple things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new group here. And I'm going to call my group here text. Text. And I'm just going to move my text into this text group. And you'll see why in a second why I did that, but all the settings now should still be the same. And the first thing I'm going to do with my text, so not the group, but selecting the text, is I'm going to rotate the X. So watch what happens when I change rotation of the X here, and I start rotating it. You're seeing it's going to be changing the perspective, and I'm trying to kind of create a perspective that matches close to what I want. So that's getting a bit closer there. And if I turn my overlays off, you can see. So what I'm doing is I'm changing the X rotation so that I can get it to look like it's kind of on the fence. Now, the X rotation is only going to do this so much. I still need to kind of do another setting change. So when I've rotated enough that I think, okay, because, you know, if I keep going, it's not going to make it work any better. At some point, it just looks strange. So just a little bit of X rotation just to get me started. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my group. Okay. So I'm selecting my group now, and I'm actually going to use the four corner option. And with the four corner option, I'm actually going to take this corner and this corner and this corner and this corner and try to drag these out to make it look like it's the same perspective. Because see how right now this line is going kind of almost straight and this one is much more at an angle? I'm going to try to make this edge of the R match the angle a bit of the fence here. So I'm going to do that. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to keyframe it. But first let's just change the settings to make it work. So I'm going to move this like this. So I'm moving this bottom left corner out, as you can see. Something like that. And then I'm going to take this, top right X coordinate, and I'm going to move it in a bit like that. And maybe even take this bottom left and move it out even more. And now I think it is closer. Let's just take a look and see what this looks like now, okay? So I'm going to play it. And as you can see, it is looking a lot more like it is attached. Now, here's the thing. Perspective changes. As this fence is, you'll notice like when I'm in the middle here, these lines, they go straight up and down. But when you get to the edge here, these lines go at a bit of an angle. So what that means is I could keyframe my bottom left corner here and my bottom top right corner here. I could keyframe these so that they look correct on this frame, which is at the start, and then move all the way to the end here and try to make them a little bit more accurate. See, now it doesn't quite look right, so I could go in and change this value and move it even more like that. And I could go and change this value and move it something like, let's say, that. And just change the keyframe so that the perspective shift of this text matches the perspective shift of this fence. And if I do that, it might make it look a little bit closer to being really stuck on the fence. So I think that's pretty close. Now, obviously you could spend a lot more time getting, things looking exactly right. Like for instance, if I go to the middle here, this, when this right here, this Y, it's still kind of shifting to the right here, and it really, should be up and straightened down. It really shouldn't be skewed so much. So, I could go in and I could change these 4 corner values so that this perspective of this text exactly matches the perspective of this fence. So I hope you get the idea that in order to make it look like, this piece of text is actually attached to this fence, the perspective of the text itself has to match the perspective of, this fence. And you can do that by keyframing the shearing of these, and or the 4 corners, sorry, and then the tracking. But this is just a really quick tutorial on how you can, quite quickly make it look like your text is attached to something like a fence, so that it really gives it a neat, perspective and a real neat attachment to the video, and it makes it look like it's actually part of the fence. And that's a quick look at motion tracking and perspective and changing things in Z space and rotating on the x-axis and changing the 4 corner and doing keyframing so that you can create your name on your friends.